Well, reading this book has convinced me that I've never been anything other than just a casual, very casual student of the Civil War. In the past, when I've read about Grant's Overland Campaign, I thought it more or less started in the wilderness, jumped to Cold Harbor, and then you got to the siege of Richmond and Petersburg, and you end up in Appomattox. But with Gordon Rhea's books, you learn that there was a huge amount of important and interesting stuff that happened in between those points. In this volume, in his series on the Overland Campaign, he picks up the narrative immediately following the battle for Spotsylvania. And then he follows the duel between Grant and Lee for the 2 weeks that led up to the Battle of Cold Harbor. And what an interesting and brutal 2 weeks that was. There are a number of things that I got out of this book. One of them was exactly how and why Grant and Lee maneuvered their troops the way that they did. The second big takeaway is what absolutely relentless and ruthless killers both Grant and Lee were. They fought one another every single chance that they got. I don't know what the casualty totals were for these 2 weeks, but I'll guarantee you there were a lot. The third takeaway, and maybe the most important one, was that Grant was finally getting the Army of the Potomac to behave exactly the way he wanted it to. Or maybe I should put it the other way around. The Army of the Potomac was finally catching on to Grant's style of making war. The subject that permeates this book is the use of maneuver by both sides. Grant used maneuver to somehow or other try to force Lee to follow or anticipate the movements of the Army of the Potomac so that he could get him on open ground where he could take advantage of his numbers. Grant was actually taking advantage of the difference in the strategic viewpoints between him and Lee. Grant's strategic objective was to absolutely destroy Lee. Lee, on the other hand, it seems like his primary goal was somehow or other to defend Richmond. Now, as far as an overall assessment of this book goes, I've got to say that the narrative is as fast and exciting as the first 2 books in the series. The maps are absolutely great and super helpful. I particularly appreciate Gordon Rhea's very, very thoughtful evaluations of Lee's and Grant's performances in these 2 weeks. Now, I'd like to make a third observation about Gordon Rhea's sources. I skimmed through the bibliography at the end of the book. It's quite extensive, as you'd expect, and it contains a lot of private letters, diaries, and other unpublished manuscripts. It's got a lot of contemporary news accounts of these battles and a great number of published histories. I realized when I looked at all this that that is the kind of stuff that serious historians and students do. They read this kind of stuff. I plainly never have. But once again, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and it makes me really eager to pick up the next volume that's going to deal with the Battle of Cold Harbor. So I really recommend this book for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, press the like button, press the subscribe button, and once again, thank you for your viewership.